Russia and Israel have a new filmmaking pact. A filmmaking pact. A pact of film. And this seems like kind of a new concept that two countries, um, including the Israeli ambassador to Russia, signs this big thing with the Russian Minister of Culture, head of the Russian Cultural Ministry, and they've had this deal inked out, or they pounded this deal out. It took them a while, and they announced this big thing: the Russian Israeli filmmaking pact, and they signed this thing and with the ceremony and so forth. And it seems completely insane and totally deranged that Israel would do this, because why wouldn't they do? But there are reasons why, and this comes after however much gaslighting about how Russia is this anti-Zionist kind of. I mean, this is the rhetoric coming from Russia, and pro-Russians has been that Russian is fighting this anti-Zionist. This is, and they'll hit you from multiple directions as usual. Because I mean, for example, let's say let's go back to Butterball McGregor, who's on Tucker Carlson. This is a couple weeks ago, I guess. But McGregor was on Tucker Carlson, and he says that it's the war is to be blamed. The war with Russia and Ukraine is to be blamed on these neocons he euphemistically says these neocons, and McGregor says that they have an axe to grind with their ethnic grievances because they're from, Russia. He's saying that these neocons are Jewish. This is a heavy, loud. This is what you'd call a dog whistle, the right wing hate dog whistle or whatever. See, the ADL. I have to do their job now because they suck so much. But we're gonna police McGregor's hate or whatever. And but McGregor is, I mean, he is a Zionist and he is an anti-Semite. That might seem weird, just as weird as this seems like when how the Russians will say, that Jews are Nazis and so, but hold on. I mean, the facts are there. I mean, the fact that McGregor says this is what you hear a lot, is that like Russia, these kind of Russian types, there's a certain strain of Russian where it'll pretty much be like a pro-Russian neo-Nazi who's basically afraid to Heil Hitler. So he'll say that Russia is even more National Socialist. It'll be like a Strasserite or something. But it'll be like this type. And they'll talk about how Russia is so gloriously anti-Semitic, more so than Germany, where, because these people, this type, they'll maybe say there may be Holocaust denier, and they'll say all the Jews got away from Germany, but Russia is the historical, they'll glorify Russia as like a historical persecutor of Jews or something. I'm not making this up. It's out there. McGregor's in on this. He's clearly tapped in that he said, because this is who you hear this from. All right. Okay, but I mean, the point of it, just to chew on it, is this a fact? And I think to some degree, you could say that, yeah, a good deal of Jewish people in the United States did come from the Tsarist territory, called the Pale Settlement and so forth, and from Russia, and from, a lot of people came from the Pale Settlement, a lot of American Jews. But do they have a particular axe to grind? Like, is Russia their enemy number one? You know, that's how they'll. I would say that historically, maybe you could say that Russia. I'd say that Russia is a historically more anti-Semitic nation than, say, Germany, where Germany is more anomalous when they get into this stuff. Even though it's more spectacular, like in World War II, like the outcome is more spectacular. More more often, Jewish people got along fine in Germany. In Russia, it's like a series of pogroms, and like you're just getting, probably Jews are having a rough time with all these Cossacks and whatever, and but nevertheless, these same people will say how Jewish people executed the Tsar and all that. So there's been a retribution here, The Tsar isn't in power. All the Tsar's people are dead or driven out, and more or less these people died out. And you could say that from that point of view, the narrative that these people give, the Jews are victorious. The Jews are victorious in Russia. Is that, I mean, wouldn't you say, because they'll say that the Jews all back. I think this is a more simplistic way of looking at it than in reality, but right, the Tsar is the big anti-Semite, the Jews back the Bolsheviks, and they execute the Tsar and all his people and rule over Russia. They take over Russia, and they kill all these people. So you could say that Russia is undefeated or something, because look what happened. But why would Jewish people still have a big animus with Russia? It's a completely different. It'd be like if you hate French people, so you don't like Haiti or something. These people are gone, more or less. Not that there isn't certain, and how would it be different than Ukraine, say, where I'd say there's a longer running historical animus who, with the Kievan Rus and so forth, who, right? I mean, if you want to go back to the Khazar thing, you could say that the Ukrainians, they might have more of an axe to grind with the Ukrainians. They might have just as much of an axe to grind. But I don't think that's the case. I don't think it's really the case that there's these neocons. I think people are very sloppy about what they define as neocons as well. And if you're just going to say that, if you're going to use neocon as a euphemism for Jewish people, I mean, that's sloppy enough. But okay, if you're going to, I just don't think that neocons really work that way, that they have an axe to grind because their ancestors came from Russia, or that Jewish people, I don't even think that, I mean, either way, what, but why to get off on this? Is Israel has, but McGregor, okay, here's the thing. But McGregor is like huge in Israel. So McGregor says all this stuff. He says all this stuff about I mean, anybody else, if they're not, I mean, let me just say, McGregor's book is required reading for the IDF officers, for the IDF officer corps. So to be an officer in the IDF, you have to read McGregor's book. And McGregor's been doing talks in Israel for like forever. I mean, there's all this stuff. You just dig in. And when McGregor's been accused of being an anti-Semite, because I mean, he just is. It's just a fact. He has IDF generals like writing articles in the Jerusalem Post about what a great guy he is and how this is not true because he's a committed Zionist. So it's just true. so you get weird characters like that who are running dual narrative streams, dual propaganda streams. Okay, McGregor is a good example of that, and he gets away with this because I gave it a few days to see if the ADL would call out um McGregor. I gave him a few. I want, but they never did, and they you know, it's been a thing. The ADL, the Anti-Defamation League, they're it's been a thing. Like people are saying ban the ADL, but then some of the stuff people seem to be getting a little twisted on what the ADL. I mean, what we're getting into the weed. I mean, Laura Loomer is saying that we need to ban the ADL because Max Blumenthal wrote them a letter saying they should condemn the Azov battalion, and the ADL refused to do so. So we should ban the ADL. And Laura Loomer is saying that the ADL is running neo-Nazis, and that there's like a bone-faced guy who she claims was in Ukraine, even though the evidence seems to be coming out that this guy was never had nothing to do with. He's just a big. I mean, the guy's just full of beans. But Laura Loomer is saying this guy was like a neo-Nazi in Ukraine, and the ADL and the feds are like they're like running these guys because what they're saying is that the ADL employs like all the neo-Nazis to like all the hate groups. The ADL really runs these people because they're just trying to show that hate is real, but otherwise, but the MAGA movement is saying that there is no, there's no hate, it's all fake. It's the ADL made it up. Or whatever, more or less, in broad strokes, this is where we're at, and but meanwhile, Russia and Israel, everyone else is as you know, there's sanctions on Russia pretty much all over the place. Most people are boycotting Russia. There's no Netflix in Russia, and this and that. So it's very controversial that anyone would be dealing with Russia at this point, especially our greatest ally, of all people who would be dealing with Russia, of all people who would start a filmmaking pact. The last people you would figure would be our greatest ally, Israel. But here we are. And Israel has struck off a pact with Russia, and it's to make films. But I mean, this is not an innocuous thing. If you're basically allying with this country to make propaganda. You're allying with an enemy of America to make propaganda, and you could say, oh, well, they're not. Russia's not our official enemy. But Israel's not our official friend. Keep in mind. Let's not play games here. What we have going on now, this might seem so, it does seem weird, because really at the beginning of this, where I think people had to, with war, things get shaken up, and just where you're at, you have to orientate yourself, in reality, and sometimes that can take you in strange places. But I know when this war kicked off, maybe certain people see themselves one way politically, and they find themselves in this. I mean, I'll just say that the most of the people in the U.S., who are backing Ukraine, who are really into Ukraine, you know, are say are more libtard, are more liberal. You know, that does nothing for me, but it's just the facts. You know, I'm not gonna. For me, it's not that inconvenient. I don't care that much. You know, it's just reality. I'm not gonna cry about it. You know, whatever. Okay, so here we are. But you know, sometimes things can fall out in different ways. So why is you know, maybe we would have figured that we'd be on the, you know, we want to support Ukraine. We want to make sure, maybe if we thought NATO was a joke before, or maybe if we weren't too keen on this or that, but we want to back Ukraine. We want to get the weapons there. You know, maybe we would have figured everyone's like falling in on a big thing. You know, we're noticing who our enemies are. We're noticing, you know, maybe we have China. You know, we have who are our friends. Maybe Japan, Taiwan, Australia, people, you know, and you maybe would have figured that Israel, of course, would have somehow fallen in with the good guys, or you know, they'd be on our team. And then but it's turned out that they're not. I haven't jumped the gun on those at all. I haven't really been weighing in on it. I would have assumed at the beginning, and I'd have been fine. Like, I'm not like a pro. Like, I'm not like a pro. You know, I'm not like a Zionist or something, and I've never been. You know, and just that's just how. That's just the reality of it. But if we were like, if I found myself on the same team, like, if Israel really was against Russia, you know, like people are claiming that because Russians will claim this is a Zionist war. So if we found Zionists on our side, I wouldn't have a big problem with it. You know, I'd, I'd just accept it and say that's great, and you know, we're gonna back our guys and we're gonna fight. You know, the others. You know, or so on and so forth. You know, you prosecute your war accordingly. You know, but you would have figured. I kind of would have figured that. You know, Israel might have. I might have figured that the pro-Russian anti-Zionist faction that said that the Zionists would definitely be in with like the U.S., Ukraine, accent. Like there'd be like Israel, and you know, Israel is nowhere to be found. Israel has been helping Russia, you know, this whole time. Not in any huge ways. But if you want to go way back, you know, Putin was banking on the Israelis to get him drones, and it's why the Russian army really doesn't have a whole lot of drones, is because he was counting on the Israelis to deliver with that kind of tech. And Putin and the Israelis have had a relationship for a while now. I mean, it's getting disrupted, but the Israelis seem intent to try to keep this going, even to the detriment of the U.S. And we might figure that we're giving Israel however much backing, but you look at it, China's pouring in money too. China's getting in on this too, getting Israel all this money. And if you go back to the Cold War, you know, just to chew on this, there's however much stuff that maybe makes sense of the stuff. In the Cold War, Russia was considered like Jews, and Israel was considered a U.S. ally against the Soviet Union, and Jewish people. It was an issue, and say Jewish people in the United States would raise this against the Soviet Union, that the Soviet Union's not letting Jewish people leave. Because by this point, the Jewish people are trying to get out of the Soviet Union. They've got a better thing. You know, they don't want to be commissar of whatever. They got a better program with Israel, and so they're trying to go, and Russians are trying to make them stay. And so the U.S. was trying to facilitate that movement of these Russian Jews to Israel, and it was like a big. Well, that has only backfired on us, as because now after those people made it there, and a lot of these people maybe are uh, not even however much Jewish, or identify certainly more as Russian. Um, Once these people make it to Israel, they become, they've become a substantial pro-Russian uh, force right there. So they can shift things. There's a significant Russian-speaking percentage of Israel even right now, and so their ties are big, and so there's reasons why it might make sense to have a Israel-Russia film industry, but you got to figure what this might mean. Um, because these movies aren't made for like no reason, especially, um, there's messaging involved here, and certainly it seems this goes with how Russia emulates the U.S. in certain ways, and to become like an alternative competitor. This has got to be Putin's idea and how he's gonna rival Hollywood, and because he probably figures he doesn't have that many talented people in Russia, it's just not going to happen. You're not going to make like something similar to Hollywood in Moscow. So he's going to ally with Israel, and they'll make movies with him. As far as I've seen, this could be somewhat successful. Going back, I've seen some certain Soviet movies that were very good. Their War and Peace was much better than the Hollywood Solaris, Stalker, Come and See. There's a lot of kind of popular movies you might have seen that the Soviets did that were very artful, coming from the Soviet system. But the Russian movies you see now seem like a bunch of trash, and I've seen quite a few that are unimpressive. Like I watched this movie Sobibor about the extermination camp, and the Russians somehow made this like the dumbest thing. I mean, there were some wild sequences to that movie, but these are not. I mean, but I'll say the Russians they've done certain partnerships, say with Germany recently, and I'm pretty sure like that movie Downfall, and also the movie Mongol. I think those are joint German Russian productions, and I mean, those are pretty excellent movies. And I mean, could a Russian Israel movie be artful type? I'm sure it could be. I think these could be excellent films, and but these are going to be films with clearly again, like that have a propaganda value to them that's going to be against the United States, because I mean, the Russian movies you see have a heavy propaganda bent. Like they're putting out tons of these World War II movies, and that like reinforce their whole view of the whole thing. They're coming out with that stuff all the time, and it's to get us to the point where we're at now, because they've um they have more of a militant mindset. They're always drawing from World War II and like their glory from that, and they're always putting on these movies and reminding people of like what they were at the time, what they could do, like how awesome it is to drive in all these T-34s and so forth, and just crash into the Nazis, and that's why everyone now is still a Nazi and so forth. They're still living it, and they have a heavy propaganda. and it's nothing that Israel is going to try to downplay, I'm sure. I mean, you got to figure that who would do this? Why would Israel? Imagine it. I mean, what they would think about different countries. Like, I mean, as maybe as cliche of a thing, but I mean, imagine how Jewish people might feel during World War II. People are striking up, filmmaking pacts with Joseph Goebbels and things. You know, I know, it's like a cliche or whatever, but it's pretty appropriate. I mean, just think about that. It's not that different than what this Russian type movies are gonna be. I wouldn't even doubt if some of these movies have like kind of entertainment value to them. Like if you could imagine they'll make the I don't know, like the Azov Nazis or something, just exterminating people in the Donetsk. I mean, it might, you know, they might have like the death camp in the Donbass, and this could be there could be entertainment value to these movies. Nevertheless, just as in terms of political orientation, you got we you got to look at what Israel's doing. Other people aren't playing these games with Russia. Other countries maybe are not going to be so intransigent to the United States. They're not. They're trying to keep their distance from Russia. So this is um, a very provocative move that the Israelis are doing right now. And I mean, they're backing up people. What principles these people? I mean, you go on and on about how rotten it is to act like Hitler for decades, and then the next big European war where you have a clear-cut aggressor and someone who's just gaslighting everyone and just lying about it, and Israel backs it up where they're just massacring whole cities, and Israel just backs it up, and they haven't um taken that much offense to even like top Russians who, let's say, other people that the Israel might have the ADL draw down on in ways that Israel will tolerate some of the stuff from Russia. I mean, I'm not. I think I'm trying to be fair with this stuff. I'll say that I think American Jewish people are not with Israel on the stuff at all, and they're I mean they're heavy with Democrats, and I'm sure there's a few of these. I'm sure there's a few like Abby Hoffman types who are all on the rah rah Russia thing, and would be like you know. But I don't know. Justin Hinkle isn't he isn't even. I mean, you'd expect, but I mean, I'm just saying that as far as like the old subversive stereotypes and so forth, actually, um, American Jewish people are pretty much pro-Ukraine and are behaving maturely in the face of the Russian propaganda, and I think that's good. Like, I'd even say that I think it's pretty good that I'm not like a fan of the ADL, but I think if when the ADL will do things like when they said like, yeah, like not ever like Sonnenrads can be okay in certain. I mean, they were trying to give like the okay. They were trying to give the okay to like Ukrainian nationalist units. They actually weren't like Max Blumenthal was trying to get them to condemn these guys, and the ADL are actually trying to be a little mature about the situation and not get into that. And as far as that goes, good for the ADL. and bad for Max Blumenthal and Laura Loomer, who represent this disgusting subversive tendency to just tear down the country, you know. But most people aren't getting into that. I mean, I'd say most people who are getting more involved in it are unfortunately like conservatives, and you see more evangelicals. I mean, I'm just being honest. I see you'll say, well, American Jews are all Democrats and liberal, and so they've fallen in on this. But either way, good for them. That they're not. It's just what I'm seeing is I don't see people necessarily in lockstep with Israel, where Israel has been against sending weapons to Ukraine, and Israel has stopped even Germany from transferring weapons to Ukraine. So that's how pro-Russia Israel has been. Not in any, I mean, significant. They haven't really delivered all the drones to Russia, but at the same time, Israel seems to be looking a blind eye on Iran doing that same thing. So I don't know. I mean, when it's a war, like I say, sometimes you might go into it figuring what different people are all about, what their motivations are, where they're gonna fall in. You know the gist of them, and then they might surprise you. If you pay attention and you allow yourself to learn, you might be surprised. You probably should be, because a lot of times things fall out arbitrarily. It doesn't necessarily disprove anything. It's just reality. What proves something is how you and your the worldview you operate on, how you how you approach reality, how you can adapt to new facts and things like that. It's more of a problem if you have a fickle worldview where you're obstinately clinging to some outdated narrative or whatever. There's a lot of that. I mean, there's a lot that I'd assumed in the past that I no longer believe. Different things show themselves to be true or false, and sometimes and say, "Oh, I would have figured this," but it's been like that, and sometimes you end up with the Russia-Israel filmmaking pact. So I wouldn't have really went into this figuring that that Israel would have been throwing in with the Russians like they are. I mean, like I say, it's not that it's not they're not giving that much material support, but it's enough support to be really deranged, to really show that they're deranged people and that their hearts are in a bad place. That what do you have to make a film with someone who's like invading like their neighbors and like just massacring all these people? They're like lying about all of it. They're just gaslighting everybody, and you enter into a filmmaking pact with these people just gaslighting everyone. The amount of lies that are coming out of Russia, and if you're not already, I mean, disgusted by it, it's probably just because you're a low IQ person who just believe all this stuff. If that's you, I'm not gonna spend a lot of time on it. I can't spend my time, debunking all this, stuff. It's not really what I'm about. There's certain people who are just gonna respond to new facts and see it. There's people have more value. There's only so much time that you can spend, with certain people. Others, it's just a matter of just being disappointed and just figuring how unbelievable. Like I'd say with Israel, let's just say with Israel, how disappointed we are. Is here's our greatest ally, and we had what Desert Storm. So I'd say in the context of the Cold War, I'd say that Israel was something of like a U.S. ally. I'd say like there was strategic logic to Nixon um, in 1973 bailing Israel out. You know, Cold War beyond the Cold War. You know, you say Israel, Desert Storm. Israel did not participate. Even Israel got shot by Saddam Scuds, and but you know it was decided that Israel's participation would only make things worse. You know, so they didn't help any, you know, except as like a negative propaganda type thing. I don't know, they didn't help any, but nevertheless, they're the greatest ally. Um, you know, their help would only make things worse, but they're the greatest ally. They're the greatest ally we could have. Um, and then we had a whole after 9/11, we're attacked. You know, there's all these other countries that back us up. Israel does absolutely nothing again in the whole global war on terror. Israel doesn't lift a finger to help us because you know, it only made things worse. And unfortunately, I mean, maybe that's true, but they do all of nothing, our greatest ally, and then so you'd figure with Ukraine, this is a perfect opportunity for our greatest ally to really step up because Israel could have done so. I mean, they don't. I don't know why they have to throw in with Russia, and they might figure it's more profitable, Russia and China. He could have done it a certain way, but no, they're they've. I mean, they're just on the completely different side. This is supposed to be some great ally who we've given billions and billions to, and conservatives never had a problem with him. You know, we give billions to Egypt just to kind of offset how much we give to Israel. And over the years, conservatives don't say anything about it. They don't have a problem about it. Now they have a problem about it. Now that Israel, now they have a problem. Now they, well, I should say, now they have a problem with us sending money to for another war. You know, they've never protested this stuff in the past, but Israel has a way of bringing that out with people. So there's a certain degree of Israeli influence. It's just going to creep in with the Russian influence going forward. I don't think this should be something that people should sleep on. If two countries are making a filmmaking pact, I mean, they're storytellers together, and that means they're constructing their whole worldview together, right? They're making narratives together. This is just how it's been done. I mean, how effective this has been in changing people, over the course of the 20th century. I'll just leave that up to you to decide. I don't need to make that point. But it's very strange. I mean, the U.S. doesn't have a filmmaking pact with other countries. I'm as far as I'm aware, but Russia and Israel have one together. These two countries who maybe are more similar and have more of an orientation after all than we thought, or that we've been thinking. Um, it, it's uh, it's a strange one. The filmmaking pact, Russia, Israel. You have, I don't know, however much influence involved with this whole war. And from the beginning, the Russian side, the pro-Russian side, kind of, you'd see kind of a narrative that there was they represented a certain anti-Zionist worldview, and I don't know, it's not necessarily what it's shaped to be. It just seems like these are people who will gaslight you from every which direction, and it doesn't seem like they're putting a they're on the retreat with that. Yeah. I'd say they're very successful. Just the amount of lies that they've been able to pull off with. You figure even the sloppiest Russian lies have been very successful. Just with the decentralized nature of media now, and how you're able to reach kind of just disparate hillbillies and strange like niche urban communities, and the they've been very successful. They're getting people totally deranged. There's a certain, I mean, percentage of people who are I mean, in our population who are like, you'd almost figure they're too far gone. Like the amount of stuff in their head, you'd figure they're like they'd be a terrorist. But if only their own cowardice didn't hold them back. Um, so that's where we're at now. I think this filmmaking pact could be one to watch in terms of cutting edge Eurasian propaganda and what they're gonna. I mean, hmm, the the filmmaking pact of Russia, that supposedly has like is against making certain kind of propaganda, has a pact with the country that styles itself as like the world capital of the same thing. And this just shows, I mean, this just should show you how deceptive these people are and what they are. I mean, this is just like what this is, what we're seeing formed is just a whatever you want to. I mean, it's just all lies, just turning into something. Like it's like just watching this, like different lies, and they're just like forming into like one creature, or that's what we have. Because they'll hit you from every which way. So if you find yourself, you know, you you might have certain principles in agreement, but then people, they're not discerning enough to see who's like using them. And this is why Russians spoke of like useful idiots. This is their term. Because these people, I mean, that's how they view these people, and it's not a worldview that's altogether going to be alien to the Israel worldview. And like I said, it would have been cool if Israel actually came in at the end as like our allies. I, w- I would have just said, well, I stand corrected. These people are heroes, you know. I mean, if prove me wrong in a war situation. Prove me wrong. If I say that your country is, you know, whatever, I invite you to prove me wrong. In a war situation, I'd be happy to. I'd be happy to say that the Israelis turned out to be real heroes. You know, like if like I don't know, if like the opposite of what they've been doing. But it's just reality, you know. So we go for, you know, like it's no big shocker, but not everything needs to be a big shocker either. You know, you know, extra. Read all about it. Israel betrays America. You know, Russia-Israel filmmaking pact. You know, that's just going to turn into one other thing. Israel and Russia. This is a political, and there's an underlying political pact to that whole thing. I mean, there isn't really an alliance to. There's no America-Israel pact. You know, it's an informal alliance that's mostly based on Israel benefiting from the U.S. So what we're looking at now is ingratitude, to say the least. However you want to look at that, mm, I'll say, as an American, I take a very low opinion of an ingrate, you know, of ingratitude, and I see it as like an evil thing. If you're Russian, you might have a different view. So you might fall in with different France. So, oh well. None of it really bums me out. It's just facts. It's just facts to kind of orientate on, and to keep a watch out for. You got a lot of bozos out there. Laura Loomer is going on, is completely lost the plot on what the ADL. Laura Loomer is condemning the ADL for. I mean, I mean, what Laura isn't. I mean, I don't know. I'm just gonna go do the ADL's job and just say that I'd say that it's anti-Semitism what Laura Loomer is doing. You can't accuse the ADL of that. It seems anti-Semitic. You know, I speak sincerely. Like if you say that the ADL, if you say that the ADL runs neo-Nazis out, I'm gonna tell just my honest opinion. It seems like like an anti-Semitism. It seems like a lie. It seems you know, I don't know what to tell you. I'm not I'm not the police for this stuff. The ADL is, but as we all know, they're not doing the greatest job. You know, that's been a big thing in. I don't know. I don't know. I don't want to get big into it, but I mean, there's problems. People have problems with the ADL for different reasons, but it's I don't know. I don't know if I need to get into it, but some of it just seems a little bonkers. Either way, Israel Israel has a filmmaking pact with Russia, as far as I'm concerned, and I should just say that, like, I'll say, like, I think the American Jewish community or whatever, like the population, like most Jewish people in America seem to back Ukraine. It's totally dope. I'm not gonna conflate like Hollywood with whatever Putin's trying to cut with Israel, but I'll say this: Hollywood is a total joke too, and like even though they might say that they support Ukraine or whatever, like Hollywood's a joke, and like I'd even say that like as big of a problem I have if they would like get into like World War II mode or something where they were like making all if they were like really making like patriotic propaganda that was dope or something or like even I don't know like even if they were doing something like how they say like the CIA would like support abstract expressionism during the Cold War. I think that's pretty dope if Hollywood did that. But they're really not doing anything. I mean, they're just still cranking out their dumb crap. They don't really care that much about anything. And I think I- it seems like there's more like musicians and stuff who will do stuff for Ukraine, but I mean, you figure Will Smith was slapping Chris Rock within like a month of Ukraine being invaded and making a big distraction and spectacle of himself. And this is like what these people just cared about within like a month of like a major war starting. And then, you know, this is the kind of people like these people are like all these people are like dying and stuff and like getting killed. And then like Will Smith is like carrying on like this and like this should show you what clowns these people really are. Like Russia's not gonna make something like as good as like Hollywood in terms of like production values and stuff. Like they don't have the talent and and things like that, but I mean Hollywood still should be held the task for being the trash that they are, for being like I mean they're not they're not, you know, representing our nation and doing anything great with anything that they're doing. They're just carrying on like the you know not just like the kind of people they are. But maybe that was just a good like a final note that I think that is otherwise you'd say that Hollywood could do something here. They could do something to roll back some of the stuff with Russia, but they've actually encouraged it however much over the years. Like people like uh, Woody Harrelson or something. I just saw just the other day he makes like this snarky remark, like, "Oh, I think it's so bad about how countries that'll invade, like, oh, Vietnam or something." Like, it's just like a big joke. Like, I guess he's saying like he doesn't care, but he'd be someone who would otherwise. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I bet he like ran his mouth about George Bush and stuff like that. But then like there's an even bigger and more horrifying war going on, and he's just like cracking jokes and like smoking weed and being like a complete like just disgrace to the human race and like just saying this clever funny stuff. Like that's the kind of people we have in Hollywood, and this is the kind of people who've been running the country like straight into the ground, and they've been repeating Russian propaganda for however long. So it might just be that Russia has to ally direct with Israel now, because up until now they've been like getting Hollywood to just say their own anti-American propaganda. Like Hollywood has been like just saying like there's been like a mouthpiece for just hatred for our own country. Now, because libtards have been kind of the first to identify the Russian uh, liars, maybe they can see kind of through that, and so Russia can't be as effective with their stuff. So maybe that's what's going on. Maybe that's why now Russia has to have their own pact, Russia-Israel pact. Either way, you know, it just shows how much you might have been gaslighted by gaslit by how the by maybe you know pro-Russians who are trying to describe the conflict in terms like that it's revealed itself to be quite different in character. I mean, just like from the Russians from the get-go. I mean, Russians are people who the Russian soldier, the Russian soldier. I mean, searches for nationalist tattoos on civilians, and if they find you to have these tattoos of like a hate symbol, they blow you away. And it's worse than that. It's like worse than anything. It's like the ADL, but you know, and the ADL is actually has had some sense to them. I mean, it's just reality. You know, if the ADL kind of puts it's no big it's if the ADL just represents Jewish people's interests, it's I don't think anyone has a big problem with that. You know, the reason people have had a problem with the ADL is because they go and stomp all over other people, and you know they've gone outside. You know, to destroy people's livelihoods under a pretense of crushing anti-Semitism, where maybe they've gone too far. You know, and maybe there's been however many people who are not anti-Semite, you know, who they go after with all this stuff. So that's why there's however much backlash. If you've seen this backlash, if not, you might be confused by some of this. But either way, if the ADL is not answering Max Blumenthal's letters to condemn the Azov battalion, this is good for the ADL. It's much better than the Russian soldier who just executes people for having tattoos of nationalist groups and patriot groups, Ukrainian patriot groups. Either way, I'm sure that there's a lot more to be said, but on this 9/11, but I think that should about do it for the Russia Israel Pact. All right.